been a really crazy last 3 weeks of traveling around and seeing different places. I got into Bentonville, Arkansas and got settled in, and then I went on a few small road trips over weekends because I figured, I need to be around home because I might have a job interview or something like that, and I did not want to be out on the road away from home in vacation mode and then have a job interview or something like that and not be there. So when I first got into town, I really didn't do a lot of traveling outside of town unless it was the weekend. So that allowed me to go down to Dallas and go down to Oklahoma City, see a few of those places. I made it up to Chicago and St. Louis a couple of weeks ago, saw those cities a little bit, made my way down into Iowa City, Des Moines, Davenport, but those were just 2 or 3 day sort of quick trips, leaving on a Friday and then being back by Monday. Last week was different, though, because I headed out on a Saturday and I went to Memphis, and that's what you're seeing the video of here, looking out from the pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, and that was pretty cool. But, I think it was just really, really interesting to see the southern United States, going from Memphis on to Nashville, stopped there, saw the Parthenon, made my way over to Birmingham and Montgomery, and took so much video and photos, a little bit of it here, but I'm going to have to spend a lot of time and put together all these videos into something that I can share, because it really is cool to be able to see so many different things as you're making your way around. Not all of it positive. Some of it is the blight. Some of it is the sense of places that are not places you'd want to go. And that's just as meaningful as the beautiful sights, the cool things. But as I've been going around all these places, I've been thinking, why? Why is it that I feel so compelled to go and see all of these sites? What is it that makes me compelled? Is it really just that I'm on vacation? Well, I don't know. There's something a little bit more to it, especially with this trip this past week, because it was a full week that I took, and I was on the road for 7 full days, because this past week I already have a job offer. I know what my job is going to be, and I'm not starting my new job until the 22nd, so I have some time. And so this was a full week of just being on the road, going places, seeing things. And yeah, it's fun. It's fun in a way because it's really cool to see things you haven't ever seen before. Especially after spending a lot of time over the last 5 years doing the opposite of that. Not really going places, not really seeing things, just where every day is just like every other day in rural Montana. So going out and seeing places that I've never seen before. Arkansas is a new place. Memphis is a new place. Nashville's a new place. Seeing cities in Alabama. I never saw Alabama before. And going on into New Orleans, seeing that for the first time. There's all these different emotional factors that start to hit different when you actually go to those places and you see them, and the roads that connect one place to another because you've walked down some of them and you've driven down them. And it's apparent to me that I'm not really looking for entertainment when I do this. And there's nothing wrong with seeking entertainment when you go on a vacation. You should try to have fun, and I have been having fun. But more than just having fun, I've been looking for something. I've been looking for knowledge. I've been looking for context. I've been looking for some sort of missing piece, I guess. Something that I needed to know. Maybe a sort of knowledge of the world that I didn't have before. It's occurred to me that if you want to change the world meaningfully, you need to know something about the world that you live in. You need to know what's beyond the four walls of your room if you're going to be able to have the perspective you need to make a positive difference in the world. Maybe that's one reason why I like going to zoos so much and seeing animals and stuff from around the world, because you're not just seeing animals, you're also catching a glimpse of something beyond your everyday life. If I think about it, that's why I like computer games so much, because when you load up an RPG and you're playing a game and you go into that fantasy realm, you're experiencing something that's beyond your everyday life. You're seeing something that's broadening your perspective, broadening your sense of life. And I think it's so important to do that. As I've spent this time going around looking at things and seeing other cities and just being on the open road, it occurs to me just how incredibly limiting it is when you go to the airport and you get on an airplane and you fly somewhere, and then you get off and you go to Starbucks, which is exactly the same as the Starbucks in your neighborhood. And you don't have any sense of the miles that separate you from the place where you started to the place where you're going. You get on a plane and it's like teleportation. While I've been out on the road, my boss, my old boss, and still my friend, has been on vacation as well. So we've been texting photos and stuff back and forth as we go. And he went to Ireland, but he went from Seattle. So think about this. Like, he goes from Seattle, has a layover at the airport, and then he makes his way to a different country on the other side of the ocean. And yes, he sees things that are cool. By no means am I undermining that. It's just, he saw meaningful things in Ireland, but he didn't see so much of the country that's between him and that place. And I know we have a limited time. We can't be everywhere. You can't see everything. And even if you can, there's something to be said for the fact that if you're just in this sort of a horse race to get through the content, you want to see everything, you want to go everywhere, you want to make sure that you don't leave any roads untraveled, well, that isn't necessarily the point either. It's not to just rush through everything so that you can highlight the map and say you've been there. And as I travel, I make a mental note of a lot of places, like where would I want to go back to? Where would be a good place to go with a family? Where wouldn't be? What's the demographics of a place like? All sorts of things go into my mind as points of reference for whether I might want to return at some point in the future. But my goal hasn't really been to experience all of these places in their fullness. It's just been to get a feel for what these places are, what kind of places they are. But more than all of that, it's the space in between. It's the hundreds of miles that you cross as you make your way through that which is America. Gas stations and interstates and country roads, the occasional monument and attraction, of course. Catching a glimpse of people and seeing the wonder, seeing the sadness, seeing the poverty, seeing everything in between, and not seeing it in great detail, but seeing it enough to know that it exists. There's a test, a quiz, that tells people, take a sheet of paper and draw a map of the United States from memory. And then the papers are collected from the class, and we take a look to see what exactly have people managed to do with their little bit of time to quickly draw from memory a map of the country. And it's amazing, it's pitiful how poorly we remember even the placement of the states in our country, if you're an American, a U.S. citizen. And it's crazy to me to think about how you can be so opinionated about politics, about the belief that you know what's best for the world. And yet, if you tried to just draw a map of your country, you probably can't remember the shapes and the placement of half the states. I thought about how amazing it would be if you were a young person, and I think if I could go back in time and be given anything, it would be when I'm a child, to be able to be taken, you know, like when you're a teenager, before you're an adult, to be taken on a road trip. Just imagine this. Imagine you could go on a road trip and you could be taken to see every state in the country. Just a quick stop everywhere, not, you know, not in depth, just a road trip, but a big road trip to go to every state in the country. See all the big cities, see all the small towns, see the countryside. And then when you turn 18, when you're an adult, you get a few $1,000s, a few months of rent paid for in any city of your choice, and your parents just say, you've seen America, now you can pick whatever city you want to live in and go be your own person there and make your way in the world. Imagine how that would change young people's lives. Imagine what it would be like when they would actually have seen the country that they're living in and know that the choices they made in their life were truly their own. It would be, I think that would be incredible. Because so often in our lives, we wind up on a path we didn't really choose. We're on a path we inherited. People found us. Our family had an idea of what they wanted us to be. We took the path of least resistance, and somehow you can go through a big part of your life and then still feel like maybe it wasn't ever truly your own life. And that's what I felt, this overwhelming, strong urge to discover as I've been on the road lately. Before I start my new job and face the inevitable busyness that will come along with it, and go through all of those times when, yes, I'm sure I will have time to go do things, but I'm not going to have a whole bunch of uninterrupted time when I can go on long road trips. You know, if you're married or you're in a relationship and you're doing things with the family or your spouse, you know, there's certain things you just can't do. You know, like maybe your wife wants to go on a vacation, so you go to a place that she'd like to go. And maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's a week at Disneyland. Whatever it might be, right? But it's not necessarily going to be a chance to do something like what I've been doing. To just hit the road and see places, albeit quickly. But to see places in a way that's educational, that broadens my perspective on what's going on in the world. When you get all of your information about what's going on in the world from some kind of social media, YouTube videos, whatever, yes, you get a lot of information about the world. But there's also a lot that you don't get to see, because there's a lot that's conveyed in the nuance. It's all of those things that you get a vibe of them when you're there. But if all it is a photograph in a newspaper or something like that, it just, you know, doesn't hit the same. So it's kind of just been a long road trip of eye-opening perspectives. You know, there's things that I've been thinking about, like how there's a lot of maps that show like where is the safest places in the United States to live, and where is there the best, you know, life expectancy, where's the best places for schools, like all those kinds of things. And you know what I've realized going around, especially through the southern United States, I've realized that there's a lot of places in our country which are probably safer, that are probably in some ways nicer. But increasingly, all those places that are going to be at the top of a list for the best quality of life and best schools and best health care and all of the best of everything, if you look at the property values, you realize that you can't afford to live there. And so there's places in America that are impoverished to a point, but they're also more authentic. They're more real. And they're places where maybe you can afford to live. If you think about feudal Europe, where would the best place to live be? Well, probably it would be in the castle. But how many people get to live in the castle? Who gets to live in the castle? Probably only a few people can live in the castle. And they're people who are privileged in some way. And everybody else goes and lives outside the castle walls in the village somewhere. But if you ever played an RPG, you know that the great rags to riches stories of heroes that are emerging always start somewhere outside the city walls, somewhere in that village that was rejected. That's the hero's journey. when I look at the South, I see a lot of opportunities for maybe service and common heroism. I see a lot of authenticity. I see a lot of places where just as you're probably more likely to fall victim to some kind of crime, you're also more likely to find somebody who would stop and help you if you needed it. And those are meaningful things too. Going down into New Orleans, I think I felt that more acutely than anywhere else. And I spent a lot of time while I was driving listening to YouTube documentaries about New Orleans and the hurricanes that hit and all the damage that happened, loss of life when Katrina went through and devastated that area. And that really just it adds a lot of, I don't know, something crazy when you look at a place that's new and it's modern and there's people there and everything looks like it's normal. And then you look at a documentary that shows how 20 years ago, a lot of these places were completely leveled to the ground. And people lost their lives, they lost their homes, businesses were completely destroyed. And then you look and you see what a couple of decades can do in terms of transformation. You see how people rebuild their lives, and you see how people are resilient through tragedy of all sorts, whether it's racism and the civil rights, conflicts of a place like Birmingham, or if you're looking at things like the devastating effects of Hurricane Katrina on a place like New Orleans. I think about people who like to dwell on doom and gloom and disaster and that whole attitude that the world is going to end soon at any given time. And I think about how no matter how bad things get, people always have a tendency to come together and demonstrate the better angels of their nature. And that is inspirational. It also reminds me of how important it is to focus not on pointing out problems, but on being a part of the solution. And I think about being newly a citizen of the southern United States. I think about, what is my place in all of this? I'm reminded of how important it is that when you go to a new place, you've got to understand you aren't there to bring whatever old ways of doing things you had before with you. You're not there to judge people. You're not there to criticize. You're there to serve and to be part of the place where you've come to be. And that's really what this has all been about. It's been about trying to find out, like, what is this place that I've got myself into? Where am I? And what kind of people live here? And how's it different from where I came from? And in what ways is it still similar? But I've thought a lot about how I won't have a lot of time again to do something like this, because life will go on and there will be many more new experiences and interesting things that I will get to do. So by no means am I trying to say this is, one final hurrah and then I'm not going to be able to do anything. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I've had this weighing on me. I need to go see some things. Because when you look at that map, and I need to get it out of the box it's in, but I have a map of the United States. And I took a highlighter and I highlighted all the roads that I'd traveled down, with the goal that one of these days I will be able to say that I drove through all the states in the United States. And then years pass. And you think to yourself, well, I don't necessarily need to rush through this. I got time. I can go somewhere some other time. But then you realize you don't have unlimited time. And when you're in a moment, when you're able to go do some things, sometimes it's in your interest to go do those things. Because there will come time when you're not able to. And then I ask myself if this is a selfish thing, like, am I just wasting money and just doing something that's purely self-gratifying that doesn't really give me any kind of return on investment? Because I've always had a little bit of a, I guess, cynicism toward people who go on vacations because it seems like they're trying to escape something. They're trying to pretend their lives don't exist. They're trying to somehow dull the pain of their own existence. And it seems kind of silly in a way to live your whole life being, I guess, disappointed. Trying to find a way to escape it. You should love the life you have. You should love the place where you are. And I have realized I do love the place where I am. I like my little town I'm living in. I like the opportunity I have to work in Bentonville, Arkansas, and I enjoy being there. As I make this video, I was just having some catfish and gumbo for the first time right here in town, and I was just enjoying the evening. And it's nice to be home. It's nice to have a place to call home. But it's also important to know where your home is in relation to all those other places in the world. And I think when you get to go out and see places you've never been before, it just adds a level of context and texture, and it helps you to be maybe a better citizen. You're less likely to be a person with extreme ideas and attitudes. You're more likely to be inclusive. You're more likely to be kind. You're more likely to favor connection over division when you understand what kind of a world you're part of, and you see yourself not as just existing in some kind of a vacuum, but as being a citizen not of your small corner of the world, but of the world itself. I was talking to one of my counterparts who was also displaced recently as part of my company's restructuring. And we all had a period of time to find something else to do, find different jobs inside or outside the company. And so while I've been doing all this, she's been in her own little corner of the world trying to see what she was going to do with herself. I talked to her today to see, how are things going, what's going on. And even though her job was eliminated, she said, well, I still been in my store working. And I was thinking, why would you be in your store working when your position was eliminated and you don't have any obligation to be doing any kind of work at all other than finding a job? Why would you be doing that? I mean, she probably isn't even supposed to be doing that. I don't know. And she still can't figure out what she's going to do. If she's going to stay with the company or if she's going to go do something else. And she's getting more frustrated and knows she's kind of running out of time and not super sure what she's going to do and all that stuff. And I thought, it's crazy what different experiences we're having. For me, it's been a trip to a different part of the country, going to see a new place, and, so many new experiences. And then for somebody else in approximately the same situation, it's kind of the opposite, For her, it's just a very limiting time. And I was just thinking about how you got to remember that some things make a difference and some things are just a waste of your time. Like if your job is eliminated, you don't need to be continuing to focus on those small parts of the business that are not even your responsibility anymore. Like you need to find what you're going to do next. You need to do what's right for you. But, like that's pretty crazy to think like my position is eliminated. And so I take the 3 months I have to find something else to do. I relocate and I find a job somewhere else. And another person in the same situation stays where they're at. They don't take another position and they're still, haven't had any new experiences probably, right? And I'm not bragging. Because a lot of the good things that seem like they've happened for me, they don't seem like things I've done. They seem like providence. But it does kind of put into perspective that sometimes folks, especially in professional situations, the people who think that they're the best employees, and maybe they are, the people that folks will say, well, that's the best person in our field. Well, yeah, maybe so. They're the best person in the field. Doesn't mean that they're actually doing particularly well. And that's a hard thing to swallow, because maybe you're an expert at small things, an expert at things that aren't really all that important, but you're also not very adaptable in any particular way. It's kind of like raccoons. Raccoons are not known for being particularly powerful or particularly important, but raccoons are able to adapt to just about any circumstance. And that leads me to the importance of action. Action swiftly and deliberately, instead of getting lost in the minutia. You need to be willing to go do something that's different than what you've done before. And that's weighed on me a lot, whether it's finding new relationships or meeting new people or doing new work or exploring new places. It's so important to get out of yourself and stop putting off everything for one day, for someday when all the stars align, for someday when you get that perfect opportunity to do everything you ever wanted to do. That day may never come. And so seize the day. Don't be a person who's always waiting for one day to come. And then your whole life goes by and you still haven't filled in that map. You still haven't seen those new places. You haven't still done any of the things that you talked about doing. And then everything you do, your job, your relationships, everything, it's seen through the lens of your small corner of the world. Your small, limited corner of the world. It's important to get out there and see things and know that there's more to the world than just what you saw there before. Refuse to believe that all of your best moments lie in the past. Refuse to believe that the world is just a broken place filled with things that are falling apart and things that are undeserving of love, including yourself. Embrace the fact that there's always new things right around the corner. There's always new opportunities. For every broken down old thing, there's something new that's being reborn right around the corner. Our lives are meant to be filled with passion and love, not self-limiting beliefs. And I guess I'll close out with this particular thought about obedience. Now, when we say obedience to God, well, I'm not talking about obedience to God in the sense of like a religious thing necessarily. I'm just saying as a principle. Sometimes you be feeling called to do something. It's that restlessness. It's that call of the wild that makes you feel like you've got to go do something. You've got to get out. You've got to go. Well, my advice would be to listen to that. And when you feel called to go, then go. And you might think, well, I don't know. It's too risky. It's too dangerous. I might lose something. I might wind up having less money, or might wind up having, some kind of failure that I didn't anticipate. But you've got to practice obedience to that call of nature. Because if you don't, well, you probably always regret all of those things that you said to yourself, well, one day I'll do that. Then I got busy. It's like that Johnny Cash song about how his dad never had time for him, and then he had a son, and his son never had time for him. This particular scene right here, this is looking off across the Arkansas River in Fort Smith, and that there is a lighthouse, the only lighthouse in the state of Arkansas, looking out over the river. And had to stop and take a picture of it. But it always reminds me of something that Sam Walton said about Walmart in his book. He said someone once referred to Walmart as the lighthouse of the Ozarks. And he said, I hope that as Walmart grows, it will be able to live up to that reputation, that name someone once gave it. And I think about, what a lighthouse it is to work for a company that winds up luring me all the way across the United States from Western Washington to Arkansas, and puts me on a path where I'm able to go places where I've never been before and see places I may never see again. And at the top of mind is the question of how I will pay this all forward. How will I be able to make it account for something meaningful? How can I take all these experiences and enrich my life with them in a way that helps me to enrich the lives of others. I don't know exactly what it's all about, but I know that there's times in your life when you feel like you're just inexplicably called to do something, and you can't understand why it is even. Like, what is it that makes you suddenly feel like you need to go do something in particular? Maybe it's some sort of divine calling. Maybe it's just something inside yourself, but whatever it is, I do believe that things happen for a reason. That all things work together as part of some sort of a story. And that we should follow the call whenever we feel an urge to venture out. There's a time in our lives for being quiet, a time in our lives for conserving, and a time in our lives for doing new things and venturing new things. And that's the circle of life. Sometimes you have to go through a barren space, a quiet space, when it seems like a whole lot of time goes by and not a whole heck of a lot happens. But then you also go through times in your life when everything seems like it changes. And if I've learned anything, it's that your fortunes can change pretty quick. So if you do feel like you're stuck, I would advise you to have faith, because sometimes it's in that place of abandon. Just when you start to think things aren't ever going to change, that's when you have some sort of a big breakthrough. It's just like going up the mountain. If you're Abraham with his son Isaac to make that sacrifice in the Bible, it's that moment when they get to the top of the mountain and he thinks he's going to have to sacrifice his only son, that the ram in the bushes appears, and turns out he wasn't going to have to make that sacrifice. And sometimes in life we feel like we're spent, we're used up, too old, or missed the boat, or not good looking enough, or whatever it might be, all those things that you have inside yourself that make you think you're not enough or whatever. And, the truth of the matter is, it's all kind of lies we tell ourselves. As I think about Walmart a lot, because I work for Walmart, but Sam Walton, when he started Walmart, I believe he was in his late 40s, 46 or something, I think, when Sam Walton started his Walmart thing. And, just one of those things you think about. If you ever say, well, am I too late? Well, I don't think so. I think if you really want to do something, you got it on your mind that you feel like you need to do something, you're probably not going to have a passion, a calling to do something that you don't have it in you to do. And if that's the case, then all there really is to it is to just have some faith and have some patience. But then there's going to be a time when you realize, after all that waiting, now you need to act. When that time comes, then don't hesitate. Because just like you have to be patient, sometimes you've also got to be willing to hit the road, because, you ain't going to have the same chance come more than once. Sometimes we do get second chances, though. But even if we do get second chances, very rarely, if ever, will exactly the same one come our way. So seize the day, make the most of it. In any case, as always, good luck on your adventure. Till next time, thanks so much.